If we don't get out of here by 8, it's Kurt's fault.
I had a Kurt-free meeting 2 weeks ago, and now this meeting will.
Yeah, well, I was going to start the meeting, but you weren't here, so.
Still 6:59.
Oh, I was looking at our clock.
You gotta go by that, just wait.
Okay, I'm going to call the Tuesday, June 11th meeting of the Plan Commission to order. First item is roll call. Mark?
Commissioner Adams? Here. Commissioner Harp? Here. Commissioner Aniro?
Here.
Commissioner Paulson?
Here.
Commissioner Sonntag?
Here.
Commissioner Summers?
Here.
And Commissioner Bruce
Here.
online. And it is 7:00.
Okay. Looking at the minutes, are there any adjustments, changes, revisions from,
Just the
May
change
20.
from demotion to demolition.
okay, Mark
Item
got that.
5.
Anything else? Not, I will declare the meetings approved or the minutes approved. And on to agenda items. Item 1 is a sign design review for Jade True Food. The recommendation is from staff is approval of the sign. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Very good. Is there a second?
Purple second.
Discussion.
If I may record the motion as to approve the sign design and placement.
Yeah.
That's the intent. Commissioner Paulson?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Okay, item 2 is the specific implementation plan modification.
Have a
We
vote.
still have to vote.
Oh, I didn't vote. Okay, sorry. I was trying to get it done fast. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to 2, specific implementation plan modification for the sign design review for Genesis Chiropractic. Staff recommendation is for approval of the sign as a minor SIP modification. Your motion?
Paniro, I'll move that we approve the sign as a minor SIP modification.
Is there a second?
Somerville second.
Discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Item 3 is our specific implementation plan for the Greenway mixed-use development, 8309 Greenway Boulevard. Mark, do you want to
Sure.
give some
Give a quick
background?
overview. So 2 weeks ago, you had this before you as the GDP, General Development Plan, which has since gone back to the council and they reapproved the PUD zoning for the site, and that was the second reading. So the zoning is now PUD. This is now the SIP, Specific Implementation Plan. And in addition to the items in the staff report, I have a couple additions. One was that it wasn't clear in the plan set whether the building adheres to the glare and heat standards, which includes the bird-friendly design requirements. And that is something I also advised the applicant. So I had omitted that from the staff report. And then the other addition I have is that our Assistant Parks and Rec Director has since reviewed the landscaping plan. He doesn't have any concerns with it. He did note that the removal of the trees and the terraces, which the applicant is planning to do because the sidewalks are being widened, he doesn't really have any concerns about that. Several of the trees are actually not in very good shape. Unfortunately, there's one that is really nice that is a swamp oak, but it doesn't have, it's near the corner, it's along Greenway near the signalized intersection with John Q. Hammond's. But he said, given how tight the space is there already, the street tree doesn't have a long future ahead of it because of the tight space it's in. And then we'll want to have the street trees replaced, and that is related to an idea I proposed in the staff report, which is to eliminate the right turn lane if the TIA, the traffic impact assessment, supports that idea. It's my understanding from the applicants who are here tonight that they are open to that idea, and I thought it might be good to give them an opportunity to comment as well.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Comments?
If you could come up to the.
Yep.
Hi, Drew Mears with Rear Baker, civil engineer for the project. Yes, we are open to the idea. I think it would add a lot of usable space in front of the building, kind of improve the terrace section between the sidewalk and the curb, as well as allow us to have all of our improvements within our property. There are some concerns with cost impacts on that for the project, which we'd like to work with the city to analyze and understand better before we move forward with that.
Okay. Anything further, Mark?
No.
So we get,
Go ahead.
Oh,
I'll just point out.
yeah, sorry.
I was just gonna ask a question if the city engineer or Public Works has weighed in on that removal of that turn lane at all.
So they have already requested the TIA consultant to add that to their scope. So I think they are open to that idea. I sort of got this idea a couple of weeks ago. I think it was Alder Haniro, when we talked about the 5-year street plan and the width of the intersection. John Q. Hammond's, as we all know, is really wide. And as I was reviewing the engineering staff comments shown in pink on the screen, with the major theme being why are private amenities and staircase and retaining wall, things like that, why are those encroaching into the right of way? That's when I thought of the idea of narrowing the street, and being familiar with the area as well over the years, I I think the entire intersection's over-designed and the approach from the west, the right turn lane isn't necessary in my view. But I'm not an engineer and that's why the TIA will evaluate that. But I didn't hear our engineering staff raise any concerns with that.
And if I can add,
Yeah.
there are some TIF impacts based on occupancy dates that we need to hit. So I think we do want to start the process of looking at a license agreement. In case that does not go through, we have the ability to kind of maintain the design we have here, have all options available. Make sure that we don't impact the construction schedule.
Mark, do we need a vote on the SIP?
Yeah, if you're comfortable with it after reviewing the staff report and engineering staff comments.
Kirk?
Sorry to ask another question. Mark, the revised sheet C3.0 that was appended to the packet later, does that solve the problem of items in the right of way? It looked to me like it did, but I just want to make sure. Your staff memo included some concerns and then there was a revised site plan.
Yeah, they shifted, well, Drew maybe could address this better than me, but my understanding is they shifted the retaining wall so that it would be out of the right of way. Maybe you could elaborate.
That's what's this revised C3.0.
Yep, so we addressed a couple of the engineering comments with this revised site plan. The primary one, or one of the primary ones being adjusting the retaining wall for that patio at the northwest corner of the building outside of the fitness center. Just to pull that back and kind of square it off a little bit, be out of the right of way. We also revised the layout of the sidewalk at the northeast corner to make sure we're not impacting those existing traffic signals. We also increased the terrace width along John Q. Hammonds to get a little more separation from the existing curb line. Provide a little more pedestrian safety on that corner as well. We are still encroaching into the right of way with our primary exit for the commercial space, those stairs and that ramp kind of on the north face in the center there. Just based on the floodplain elevations is kind of what's setting our building elevation. And that 2 feet above the floodplain puts us 1.5 feet over the sidewalk elevation, kind of forcing us to have those stairs and that ramp. And that's based on the layout. That's kind of where we ended up with the location of those improvements.
Is that going to pose a problem with the engineer?
Well, our city engineer's comment is that he views license agreements as being reserved for dealing with existing obstructions.
Yeah.
He doesn't like to see a new project create the need for a license agreement. That's basically a very, concrete, no pun intended. It was not intended, actually. It's meant to be a very, hard and fast rule, basically, to pull it back out of the right of way. But the right of way does bend here. And that's when I started thinking, well, why do we even need that to bend? Why not just straighten it out, which would get us terrace trees and snow storage and I think improve the aesthetics of the project too.
Okay. Sure.
But if the city engineer or the Public Works Committee refuses that license agreement, what does that do to your project? You'd have to pull it back further, right?
Yeah, we'd have to look at insetting those stairs, maybe adding.
Yes. Hi, Abby Holtman with JLA Architects. So it would cause a pretty dramatic shift in our building. We actually don't necessarily have the opportunity to shift it south because of the existing property line with the business to the west. So what Drew was saying is potentially impacting the commercial space entrance and overall square footage, which would impact, the type of tenant that Galway companies, our client, would be able to market to.
That's not something we usually make a recommendation on, right? That's up to Sean and Public Works.
Right.
You mean the license agreement?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's not the planning commission's purview to grant the license agreement. I think your focus, of course, is the design of the building. It's unusual to have a project that extends into the right of way. I can't remember the last time, frankly, that happened. So that's why we tried to be creative in coming up with other ideas, including the eliminating the right turn lane.
All right, so we could approve the SIP with.
Mark?
Go ahead, Lisa.
I had a question about the TIA. I love the idea of getting rid of the eastbound right turn lane if that's feasible. But is that something that the developer should have to pay for in the TIA? Because wouldn't that be something? That's our encouragement to them to do that. It's not actually necessary for the building they've proposed.
The TIA scope, I don't know what the cost is that the SRF consultant gave to, but it's something that's probably not even going to add to, I don't know what it's going to cost. If it costs even that much more to study it, it's so incremental.
Okay.
But the bigger issue in terms of cost is, as Drew noted, is the the expectation of repouring the curb, and more significantly likely is any adjustments to the traffic signal. The curb, they're going to be out there pouring all the concrete anyway for the sidewalks. So the curb, I mean, obviously all this costs money, but that to me is a fairly insignificant cost. It's the traffic, once you start messing with wires and cables and all that, I can see that being the bigger issue. I think there's both a mutual benefit to the city, there's a mutual benefit to the city and to the developer here. So I think discussions about how to split those costs are certainly appropriate, but that's more appropriately with the city engineer than with us.
Okay, and then the other question I have, and this is, I'm just thinking about the implementation of our building height in the zoning code. So what is the height in stories and feet of this building using our current approach? 'Cause it looks
I think it
like-
was 80. I had the height later I don't have the report in front of me, unfortunately. If you
The overall height, if I
go
may,
ahead.
is 79 feet, 8 inches.
That didn't include the parapet though.
Doesn't
which-
include the
right.
parapet because the IBC code is a little bit wishy-washy on where exactly we call the
Right.
total height of the building. And then the other part of your question,
Well, the reason I'm asking it, I have no problems
Number of
with this. I'm mainly trying to understand, we had a discussion, I think at our last meeting, maybe 2 meetings ago, about how do we interpret building height? Is it the front or is it all
Right.
four corners averaged out? And that's what I'm getting at.
So the parapet, the definition in our zoning ordinance would allow a parapet to exceed. So the height of the building would basically be what you see on the screen here. Most of the roof would be the height. The parapet to the right and I don't know, is that an elevator shaft? Actually, that was a little taller, isn't it?
an elevator shaft.
But that wouldn't count against our height definition. The formula Alder Janeiro that you're mentioning actually is every 12 feet for every story. So a 7-story building would be 84 feet. So it's basically, in line with that.
Okay.
The front of the building is going to be the tallest relative to ground level because that's where the lowest grade is on the site, the northeast corner.
Mhm.
And they're showing that at 84 to the height of the parapet is 182.5 feet roughly.
Thanks.
No, Commissioner Bruce has his hand raised.
Oh.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I thought Marky came up with a great suggestion as far as removing that turn lane. It does a couple of things. It makes the road narrower and it also improves this project considerably. I think it's really important that we keep trees out in front of the building and shading the walk. Having an appropriately designed streetscape with trees, I think is critical when we have these larger buildings. And if there's one comment that I've heard from some of my neighbors and other Middleton residents about the larger buildings, is to make sure that we keep trees in front of the buildings and keep some space for landscaping so we have a buffer. So I would really encourage that solution if it can be had. And if not, I mean, the real problem with this building is it's just a little bit too big, and maybe the building size would have to get reduced to compensate, for the encroachments and so forth. Just a couple other quick comments regarding the architecture. A question for the applicant in terms of how are the cast in place walls, the exposed cast in place walls being treated architecturally?
You're talking about the south facade, south and west facades? of the
Yes,
Building?
yes.
We will be covering those areas with EIFS material,
Okay.
both the insulation properties and the aesthetic look. I mean, it won't look all that much different like than the picture showing, but it will be covered with EIFS.
In a gray tone or a tone to match the brick, or
Yet to be determined, but we'd probably say like the medium gray tone or lighter gray tone that's shown on the imagery here.
okay. Would you, one thing that I thought would be nice to include in the design on the John Q. Hammond's facade, you have the individual entries there and additional some other entries as well. It would be nice to have a canopy over those entry doors, something to just maybe signify the entrance a little bit stronger and also give a little bit of weather protection. Would you be open to adding a small canopy over those entry doors?
You're saying just over the doors or over?
Yeah, I think just over the doors would work, or I'd whatever you guys would think would be the best way to incorporate. But to have just the punched opening for that entry, I think it could just go one step further and strengthen that design element.
Yeah, I think we could be open to that. We'd probably match something similar to what's shown over at the retail space, which is actually more of a sunshade than necessarily a canopy, but we could look at some smaller canopies if it was just going to be over the door.
Sure. What again, just to help signify that as an entrance and maybe give people protection if that's how it works out. And then the last question I had had to do with how's the commercial parking entrance and parking going to be signed, and how will that work? Can you walk me through that?
Sure. So we have, I think it's 18 dedicated parking stalls right now to the commercial spaces. And that could either be noted with, painted on the ground or signage above in front of each of the spaces, but really they're noted to be the closest ones to the commercial space, and that would be entering on the first floor. Sorry, it keeps redrawing itself every time I move.
Yeah.
So basically 21 through, I can't read that.
Those there. I see. And then there'll be signage inside the building to show entrances to those spaces, or signage for those spaces, or for the commercial space there.
With signage as you enter the
Well,
under garage area right in there.
Yeah, there'll be some exterior. Will there be exterior signage? They'll say commercial parking here. I mean, as you're approaching the building.
We can incorporate that.
I'm just trying to figure out how people would find the parking, and then once they find the parking, I guess can they identify where they need to get to for the commercial space?
And maybe even some signage. The tenant space is yet to be determined who would occupy that.
Yeah.
Be some specific signage, branded signage by that garage entrance, perhaps with an arrow
Okay, that sounds good. That's all the questions I had. Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. Yes.
Steve Doran, who I believe is the owner of the property, has his hand raised on the Zoom.
Oh, okay.
I was just going to answer your questions about the commercial signage. We plan to submit a signage package at a later date to help with wayfinding and directory into the garage for that commercial user.
Good. Thank you, Steve.
You bet.
Okay. Any other questions?
The only other comment in the staff report is whether the mechanicals on the roof would be visible from street level. Doubt it, but do you know where those are gonna be?
So exact locations haven't been noted yet. But it's always our intention to kind of hide those from street view. I think
Screen them.
screen them,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and we don't expect a lot of rooftop units. The heating system here is traditional furnaces that are in the units with vents facing typically in the unit facing out towards the street, painted, colored to match the siding. And so we don't expect a lot of rooftop units here, other than we will have a chase for the commercial user. And if that's a large restaurant, we could have an RTU up there for that restaurant space. That would be about it.
Other questions? Is there a motion?
Yeah, bring back this staff recommended motion. Yeah.
I captured a couple things, but I'll let you make the motion, and if I think you missed something, I'll bring it up.
Well, what do you mean? What needs to change on this?
Well, from the discussion, I heard a couple things, but I don't want to suggest it. It's a commissioner discussion about if you want to make any additions to the design. So I'll wait to see where you're going with that before I come up with the language or where to insert the language here. So for example, the sunshade and canopy, that was something that was mentioned.
You need a bigger screen.
This is Paulson. I'll make the motion to approve the SIP with the following contingencies. Do you want me to read them all?
I think you can just cite the numbers.
As including numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in the staff report, and with item number 10 of the sun canopies on the walk up units on the east side.
So the way I was suggesting that the addition of a canopy or sunshade over entrances facing John Q. Hammond's Drive. Is that
Perfect.
okay?
Is there a second?
Go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, I'll second, but I also wanted to add one additional comment.
Okay.
Do we need anything in there, Mark, regarding the bird-friendly glass?
Yeah, that's the other one that I had listed here. So I was going to suggest that the windows or the building's design would adhere to section 10.06 point, whatever the number is, regarding the glare standards. I
Is
think
that
it's
acceptable to the applicant?
Yeah, we're reviewing those requirements and we'll make necessary changes to make sure that we meet the ordinance.
Then include that as item number 11.
and I'm actually proposing that those be items 5 and 6, just because they fit better in that spot. But
Oh,
What's it?
explain.
well, I'm just inserting them there or somewhere else because anyway, whatever.
They're
They can
design
be added at the
features.
end.
He does it because the computer allows him to do it.
Well, I can have them at the end if you
Might
want.
be able to help you out too, because the bicycle parking note that you have noted for number 5, it was actually a a clerical error, miscalculating how many bike parking stalls we needed, and we've already incorporated that change.
Oh, you have, okay.
But I understand that if it needs to be in here because we haven't seen an updated plan, we just made that change this week.
Well, that means then that's already taken care of, so. If you want them at the end, that's fine.
I just think Professor Paulson already referred to items 1 through 9 in the staff.
That's
memo.
fine.
Okay.
Sorry.
And Lisa, you seconded?
Randy Bruce did,
Oh, Randy did, that's
Mhm.
right, sorry.
and he
Yeah,
had
and
friendly glass, so if we want to get technical, that's an amendment to the original motion. And I'll second Commissioner Paulson's motion.
As amended,
Well,
or, well, then we'll have
so,
Randy.
so Randy seconded. Randy, you want to make a motion to add the bird-friendly glass?
yeah, I'll make a motion to add the bird-friendly glass as a condition of approval.
And I'll second that.
Okay,
And now we vote on that.
all right. All in favor
Of the amendment.
of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Amendment carries. The original motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Was the original motion was by Paulson, seconded by Haniro or Bruce?
By Bruce.
Bruce.
That's what I had.
And
And then
then
the
it was
amendment was
Bruce
Bruce and
amendment.
Haniro.
Yep.
And just for future reference, what would be your preference for how to handle this when there are suggested additions? Would you like staff to raise them, or would you like
I
us
think
to
it
defer?
would be, I mean, technically, we should start the discussion after we have a
Right,
motion.
understood.
And, come up with a list of things that we're going to amend. I think that probably would be cleaner in the future.
So in other words, rely on an amendment then at that
Yeah,
point.
get
Okay.
get a main motion, have a discussion.
Okay.
You staff keep track of all the items that people are raising. and
Leave a
then-
blank space or two.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, and I
Number them,
had, and
starting-
and I already had typed in those exact two amendments and could have suggested them before a motion was made, but I didn't want to suggest them if that wasn't the pleasure of the commission. So
we'll let you know if we're not pleased.
duly noted.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We haven't thoroughly confused you, have we?
I'd like to take the moment quickly to introduce, I meant to do this at the beginning, but on the screen, you can see at the bottom of the screen, we have Nikki Cuevas, who has joined us for the summer as an intern from the Urban Regional Planning Department, or whatever the department's name now is, Professor Paulson. But Nikki Cuevas is here for the summer and is especially interested in and will be helping us with transportation related issues such as our active transportation plan.
Great.
Cool.
Welcome, Nikki.
All right.
Nikki's great.
Okay. That gets us to item 4, which is the site plan review for the new maintenance building for Pleasant View Golf Course. Recommendation from staff is approval with the following contingencies, 1 and 2. You can read those. Any discussion? Or motion, rather.
Well,
Need a motion first
Yeah,
before
I'll
discussion.
follow the staff recommendation and I move that we approve the site plan with the contingencies. 1, resolution of all engineering and forestry staff comments, and 2, light fixtures will not be mounted higher than 20 feet on the exterior of the building.
Is there a second?
Somerville
Also-
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded. Now discussion?
I have a couple of questions. So this is our facility, correct?
Yes.
Why is there not solar proposed on top of it?
Daphne, do you know?
No, that's a good question. This was just kind of brought up by our golf course. And so this is how they had, structured it or organized it. And it was submitted to us, so we just kind of reviewed it, similar to how anyone else kind of reviews it.
I'm thinking of adding a contingency that they put solar on the building. I mean, because we always ask I always ask developers, you're gonna put solar on, and we can't make them, but this is our building. So
Well-
we can do it, you know?
If it needs solar, I guess. I don't know how much electrical use we get out there.
Well, my understanding, isn't this building eventually going to
Oh,
house
EVs.
the EV?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was surprised to hear that. But,
Doesn't the plan indicate that there's gonna be some, like lift stations for working on vehicles?
I don't know.
I mean, there's 2 vehicle lifts in the maintenance area.
Okay. You're meaning that takes electrical energy? Is that what you're?
Yeah, so there's
Okay.
definitely,
Yeah. Well, obviously there's
Electrical
gonna be
bill.
electric usage there. Rather than adding it as a contingency, why don't we ask the golf committee to make a recommendation on that or look into getting it rather than requiring it as a contingency at this point. That I'm sure they just didn't think about it.
Did this come to us from the advisory committee?
The golf, yeah, it came to us from the golf course director staff, right? I do not know if it had gone through the golf course advisory committee, whatever that's called. Daphne, do you know?
I'm not sure if that has gone through the golf committee.
Well, I can be pretty well sure that the golf course committee knows about it because our general manager is pretty good at making everybody aware. But I think it's a good idea to at least talk to Jeremy about it.
Commissioners, how do you feel?
I think it's good to ask the question.
I don't know if we necessarily a requirement, but
Right.
it's definitely a good opportunity to move towards our sustainability goals.
Mhm.
and I would think council could certainly pass a policy or an ordinance requiring all city buildings to start with the presumption that they will add solar, and only not if if the engineering specs won't allow it, but the roof is pitched in the center, right? So it's gonna be direct east and direct west sun. If you go back up to the site.
North, south, maybe east, west. Not sure. Building that's there now is north, is east, west, lengthwise. But
If the roof line runs in the middle of the building, then
yeah. Yeah, so they're kind of north, south on this drawing. A little bit of a cant to it.
Randy's got his hand raised. Randy's hand is raised.
Oh, yeah, Randy.
Yep. I would encourage us to at least look into the solar. I think I'm not sure that the exposure on that roof is going to make it too advantageous, but I think we ought to look into it. I don't think we can ask developers to put solar on if we're not doing it ourselves.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just did have one question regarding the fence the fence design and the fence height along Black Hawk. I was just thinking about the residents across the street, and this building's going to be coming quite a bit closer to them than what they're used to, and how we would be screening that.
I believe it is a 6-foot fence, and it is like a wood privacy fence. I'm not exactly sure on what color it is, but it will be blocking basically all that the street frontage from the neighbors.
And the only other comment I'd make is maybe we add a couple of additional trees or evergreens or whatever to just close up the gap that's present, right there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Adding just a little bit more landscaping, I think, would help and go a long way.
we know who did the design?
It is
Architecture.
architecture, yeah.
Blake Tyson.
Oh, Tyson, okay. So is that something we can ask him to do?
Well, I think as part of design review of a site, landscaping certainly is appropriate component of that. The fence, I guess I hadn't realized there was a fence as part of it, but you know, broadly, that's a design issue related to the building too, I guess, kind of.
Is solar a design issue or a use issue? At the
Well-
design review stage.
I think I like the response that the city council could adopt a policy requiring that solar to be integrated with all city buildings. It's exempt from our, actually, Daphne knows this better than me, but solar, the way you've handled that is it's always exempt from our permitting requirements, right? Or at least that's how it was in the past. So it wasn't really a design issue as much as we were encouraging it as a matter of policy.
So for our solar policy, right now in our new ordinance, we allow exceptions to the height to have rooftop solar. And then we currently just waive all fees for, like zoning permit fees for solar. Otherwise, I'm not sure if it's, if we consider it a design component. I do know we just encourage it wherever possible. And so that's why we have waived those fees.
We do address small scale and large scale solar systems in our ordinance. And it's basically just very permissive. So I have never really thought of it as a design review issue. So to answer your question, I don't believe we would do design review for solar installations.
No, what I meant was, is it appropriate to attach a solar requirement at a design review stage? As opposed to through some other means? I mean, I take Alder Hanairo's point, right? The city's been talking about a sustainable purchasing policy for 5 years. And here we have the golf course that seems to have just submitted something without paying attention to this issue.
Well, because they aren't paying attention to
Yeah,
it.
I mean,
because-
Yeah, there's no other way to put it.
This is an example of insular thinking.
We're putting solar on top of all the golf carts too.
That's just par for the course. So.
Here we go. Well, we're still in your motion, right? Alder Lisa?
Well, no, we've got the motion
Right.
and we have a second. We're discussing now and coming up with additions. And we were talking about landscaping briefly. I wonder if we can go to that page. So don't they have to have 75% native plants? And I think the sugar maple that's proposed on this page might be on our list of, it's not, I can't remember if it's actually prohibited or just recommended
Discouraged.
against, yeah.
I can pull up the ordinance and find out.
And that made me wonder, how is 75% counted? Is it, because like one little, 2-inch pot or 4-inch pot versus a tree? Do they each count equally, or is it volume? Is it?
The 75% you're referring to, I'd have to pull up the ordinance.
Because I don't think most of these are native. And I won't say I'm surprised that the city forester didn't catch that, because he might not be aware of the requirement in the zoning code.
He is. We've talked about this just today, not the native landscaping part, but about his review of the ordinance as it related to the Greenway mixed use building. So I know he's.
Well, again, given that we are always encouraging developers to, go above and beyond and incorporate native plantings, especially with climate change, those plantings are going to be shifting over the next decades. But I feel like the landscaping plan should adhere to our policy or our zoning code.
Well, can we direct staff to look into this?
We can do that.
I'm currently
And bring
looking.
back something to the next meeting?
Well, or you could have well, we could do that, or the motion could include a contingency on simply adhering to the landscaping standards. I'm sorry, what's the species I'm looking for in our list? Sugar
The
maple, that's
sugar
right.
maple.
Um,
It's the fall fiesta maple.
yeah. I'm sure you looked it up, so it's either a native planting type, yes or no. I'm looking for the other language. Here we go.
Well, I like the idea of, asking staff to research this.
Okay.
And going back to the solar thing,
The what thing?
the solar issue,
Oh.
I'm looking at the idea of having council adopt a policy. And I'm looking at our 100% renewable energy policy. And even though it doesn't say all new city buildings must have solar, I mean, it's all about how the city will meet 25% of its electric needs for city operations. I mean, that's the argument I make to developers. Our policy is we need everybody, not just the city operations, but eventually the whole community. So will you help us get there, or will your building, hold us back and require, retrofits in the future? And I kind of feel like this 100% renewable energy resolution lays it out that we are supposed to be meeting our energy needs with renewable energy. So I'm happy to make a referral to the Common Council to consider adopting a policy to make it clear that new buildings, new city buildings at least must look at solar. We have to consider if solar is an option.
That's a separate issue.
Right, that'll come
Yeah.
from this. Yeah,
Would you be open to a motion that requires the applicant to install solar or demonstrate to the sufficiency of X, I don't know who that is, that it's not feasible on this property?
yes,
Because it'll increase the cost, because but it's a city-owned building.
right.
And then finance committee can decide if it's council or the golf course that pays.
Exactly,
Mhm.
right, because that would be the reason for the golf course folks to balk at it, is that they didn't budget for that.
Mhm.
But if the city wants solar, then I don't see why the city, obviously, if we don't have the money, we can't do it and wouldn't make them do it. But if we have to put our money where our mouth is.
All right, so
And
at the moment, it's not a requirement. So I don't think we can tell the golf course committee or the golf course people to install solar. I think we need to refer it to council to make the requirement. If council hasn't made the requirement. And frankly, I don't know if they probably haven't. But I'm not on
I-
council anymore.
yeah, I disagree. I think we can say this, what Commissioner Paulson said. And I'll tell you why, because we have the Sustainability Committee working on a sustainable purchasing policy implementation guide. And the very first thing is, consider all these different things. Renewable energy, incorporate that into whatever what you're working on. If you can get an electric mower, demonstrate that wasn't a good option and why. Because we recognize there are some things that aren't ready yet. But that's why I like the idea of, phrase it, how did you say it?
I said, require them to install solar unless they can demonstrate to the sufficiency of X. We have to figure out if
Yeah.
that's Sean or council or Brian, that it's unfeasible, either economically or
Or, right. if-
engineering wise, right? Because it looks like it might just be a standard pole building, so it might not even have the trusses to hold up. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing, I just pulled up the satellite view. It looks like this building is gonna be wedged in between, there's gonna be two trees on the west and several trees on the east.
Mhm.
You know, so how much shade is gonna, are those trees gonna provide? Well, would it make the solar even, you know, cost effective at that point? But I still think that they should look into that.
Mhm.
You know, I think that at least needs to be considered.
Sure.
So
Okay.
paraphrasing what I heard, require the installation of solar unless it can be demonstrated that it is economically or technically unfeasible. Does that capture the idea?
Sounds good.
Do we have to specify who determines that? Because I don't think we want that coming back to us. Can we authorize that at the staff level?
Unless staff can demonstrate, require installation of solar unless staff can
Unless it can be, unless staff.
demonstrate
I would say unless it can be documented.
Yes.
That,
it can be
that,
documented
yeah.
that it is.
There we go.
And then I also had the other idea that I heard was the addition of trees to fill in the gap along the southern lot line with all landscaping to adhere to Article 8 of the zoning ordinance. I heard that as a
Mhm.
summary. Is that a
Yep.
good summary?
Okay.
Does the site plan adhere to the landscaping requirements?
I
didn't
don't-
see anything in the staff comments that, either way.
it didn't look like it to me, but I'm not the one.
I think Daphne, we just looked at the building, right? We didn't look at the overall.
Yeah,
This is a pretty
um,
unusual site because it's
Right.
one
because-
building on a
huge
huge,
parcel.
hundreds of acres, or whatever it is. So.
Yeah.
But if your intent is to provide some screening along the southern lot line and wishing to have that gap filled in, that was one concept I heard. And then the other is that landscaping, that planting should adhere to Article 8 of the zoning ordinance.
Can you show us this updated list of contingencies?
I can, it's not easy to do that. We got to figure out how, I don't know how we can easily do that, Daphne.
Oh, I'm
I've
sorry.
typed them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could email them to her. I can do that.
So it's contingencies 1 and 2 that were already in the staff recommendation.
Right.
Yes.
And then I read the other two, but I can, I'll email it to her quickly.
Is everybody good with that? Explanation for Mark? For 3 and 4?
Right, he's gonna share, in the future, Mark, it would be good for staff, all staff to zoom in, because then Daphne should, or we should be able
I
to
don't-
share.
I don't think it's that simple because of I don't fully understand how all this works, but we do live streaming. It's not as simple as it may sound with the Zoom for this application with the hybrid meeting. But I defer to my much younger colleague who knows these things.
Okay. The motion has been made and seconded and
Well, Daphne, I think did you see the email?
Mhm.
Okay. So we have a motion with the two amendments, I'm sorry, with the two contingencies of approval. That's what's before you right now. There hasn't been any other motion.
right.
So,
All in favor?
well,
Well, wait, what are we voting on?
I think we need, I will make a motion to add
We already have a motion.
conditions 3 and 4 to the original
they're
motion.
doing an.
You're
amendment.
amending the motion?
Amending the original motion.
Okay.
Because the original motion was 1 and 2.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to add 3 and 4.
Okay.
Second.
All right. All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Now the original motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Whew. Okay, item 5, the appointment of pedestrian, bicycle and transit committee member. And Lisa, looks like you want to do that
Alder
again.
Nairo wish to serve again?
Well, Alder Haniro is a little disappointed that the committee of the whole did not talk about committee consolidation and the feedback we got from committees about things like liaisons, because if the plan commission members remember, I advocated against continuing to have a a liaison to Ped Bike and Transit, because there just aren't enough times when that is necessary. I feel like there's a more efficient way to get Ped Bike and Transit issues coordinated between this body and that committee. As much as I love the committee, because it's a really great committee. But I already attend 8 meetings per month for council. And I recognize that all of us are tasked with 2 meetings, plus one of our members is already a liaison from a committee that meets twice, and one is on the CCC, and 3 are on the joint zoning with Westport. And again, I'm disappointed that council did not take this up, because I would have had them change it so that there's another mayoral appointee.
Did they not take it up on purpose? Or they
To
just
spite me?
just didn't do it? Yeah.
No, it just, we had more stuff,
Okay.
and I think it may have just dropped off their radar.
Okay.
Because they aren't liaisons to other committees. So I will agree to stay on while I lobby hard to change this position and make it be a mayoral appointee.
Okay.
I would move to appoint Alder Paniro as the Plan Commission representative to serve on the soon-to-be defunct. The soon-to-be defunct Plan Commission representative.
I'll second that motion.
I won't phrase it quite like that.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Randy.
Oh, Randy.
I
Oh,
second. Yeah.
sorry. All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Opposed? Other than Lisa?
I actually voted for myself. I did not abstain, because I don't think you have.
Okay. Item 6 is the appointment to Workforce Housing Committee.
I move to approve Randy Bruce.
I will second that. And for discussion, I will say this one, absolutely, we need to have a representative, and Randy is a great one.
If he wants to serve.
I will continue on for another year.
Okay. So the motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. That gets us to our end of our agenda, so I will adjourn our meeting, and it is before 8 o'clock.
Good job.
Thank you.
Very curt meeting.
Oh, my God.